You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Bangladesh and China have signed 21 agreements, MOUs, and announced 7 more projects to further elevate the strategic cooperation. This includes renewing the MOU on provision of hydrological information of the river Brahmaputra in flood season by China to Bangladesh. This is a major concern for India. In 2010, China began building the Zangmu hydropower station in Brahmaputra at an estimated cost of around $1.5 billion. Its capacity is 86.8 million cubic meter, and the project supports 510 megawatts of power station and has the capability to generate 2.5 billion kilowatts of electricity annually. In November of 2014, the project entered into its commercial operation. The project is over 3,300 meters above the sea level. It poses a major concern to India because Brahmaputra accounts for nearly 30% of fresh water and 40% of India's total hydropower energy. This is not it. China began water warfare back in 1995 when they, in fact, began the construction of dams in the Mekong River. Reports indicate that China has constructed as many as 430 dams, of which 11 operate in China along the entire Mekong River. 5.2 million in Laos and 23.1 million in Thailand, 13 million in Cambodia and 18.7 million in Vietnam. These are the number of lives that have been reportedly affected due to the dams. Of the 1,148 fish species, 74 fish species are at the risk of extinction and 19 fish species are critically endangered due to the dams. Even though only 17% of Mekong's water originates from China, the influence that they hold is very significant and, of course, dangerous. Well, the question that arises is what is the solution to China's water warfare? That's exactly what we will discuss with our guest. Joining us on the show is Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Ninad Seth, foreign affairs expert, also joins us on the show. Professor Madhav Nalapa, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the show. Joyita Basu, editor of Sunday Guardian, also with us on the program. Ambassador Mukherjee, what do you make of these MOUs? Is this something that India should worry about?
Well, Vineet, water warfare has been unleashed on us by the Chinese, as you rightly pointed out, many years ago. And on our side, unfortunately, we have, whenever we've had the advantage of water, like for instance, we had it vis-a-vis Pakistan for the Indus Water Treaty, we were over generous and gave away too much water when we did not have to do so because we had the right as the upper riparian state. Again with Bangladesh for the Tista Water Treaty, which is why it is so much disputed in my home state, West Bengal. There are many who believe that we have been over generous with Bangladesh. So these are very important issues. Brahmaputra is very, very important. It's a lifesaver for the eastern part of India. And we have on several occasions asked the Chinese, informed them, in fact, that this would have very serious consequences and it would perhaps lead to, if I won't say conflict, it would certainly lead to a definitive worsening of an already troubled and complex bilateral relationship. So we have to watch and wait very carefully, but there are many who say that in fact water wars are going to be the new conflict of this century. It would appear to me that as far as our subcontinent is concerned, certainly because of the way we are geographically located and situated, and because of the manner in which we have been over generous when we became independent, for instance, on the Indus Water Treaty, we are now at the receiving end as far as China is concerned, and we have to watch and wait very carefully to see how this turns out. Vineet.
Ninad, thank you for joining us. What do you make of the situation? And of course, we must, not overestimate the influence China can have on Bangladesh, because Bangladesh also has its own mind, its own reputation, and its own economy. But definitely, the Chinese have, this knack of getting into countries and making them dependent on them.
Yes, well, we need, in the context of Bangladesh, I think we should not overreact to one MOU. Great powers don't react to the occasional MOU. The larger question is that they have upgraded their relationship from the previous one. Bangladesh, unfortunately, is discovering that while it has made some very important strides economically, it is a one-horse pony. Textile is the only game it has. For the water wars, I think Bangladesh, being a lower riparian state, we should not worry because India also has leverage there. The real issue is that 1.4 billion Indian people are held hostage because Nehru gave away imperial rights in in Tibet. Tibet is where all this water originates. Tibet is actually, at the end of the day, not only about His Holiness and his legacy, but about the water on which half the world depends. So the point of the matter is that India has to take it up bilaterally, India has to take it up multilaterally, and there is a conflict possibility which is very real. If one must not forget the very, very important context of China has a $3 billion a year project to take water from its water-rich, areas such as Tibet to its water-starved areas in the middle of China, and to turn. And this is not on paper. This is something they are allocating budget to every year. So water wars are going to precipitate pretty soon.
All right. Professor Nalapat also joins us. Professor Nalapat, should we be overanalyzing this camaraderie between Bangladesh and China?
Well, I'd like to say that the Chinese offer concessions with a very clear menu of what they want in return. And once they get what they want, very often those concessions are completely forgotten. That's been our experience with China, and that is also going to be the experience of Bangladesh with China. I think a very important point has been raised, which is Tibet. And the reality is, hardly any country in the world has done anything about the fact that the Tibetan people are now outnumbered in what the 1/3 of Tibet that is still called the Tibet Autonomous Region. It's a bit of a misnomer. The other 2/3 have been made into Chinese provinces, and the same thing is happening in Tibet. Rapidly, there's an influx of people from other parts of China, and yes, it is very, very likely because China is suffering acutely from a lack of water. So let's say that the question is, and the Chinese policy has always been to trust engineering above everything else. They've got massive projects. They've done tremendous environmental degradation. So it's well within the possibility that a lot of these waters may start flowing eastwards to the provinces of China from Tibet. I think it's important to keep that in mind, and I think it's important to ensure that somehow the situation in Tibet is retrieved before it becomes too late for the lower riparian states in the sense of being starved of water. So I do believe, Vineet, the problem is very, very serious indeed. The risk is very real, and it's very, very important that we start working out on options right now, assuming that these waters will be diverted, because China is establishing almost full control over Tibet. And the Tibetan people are now outnumbered completely. And many of them are being forced to intermarry with the Chinese. And the education, everything is now Chinese. So they are slowly being, CCP-fied, if I may say so. I wouldn't call it, Sinofied, because the reality is the ancient culture of China is very different from CCP culture. But very rapidly, Tibet's culture is changing. And I think it's important for the world to react before it's too late, Vineet.
Joyita, China and Bangladesh, is it a cause of worry for India? Or do you think that India, with the way it's been dealing with Bangladesh in thick and thin, has nothing to worry about, especially when it comes to China?
Well, when you are looking at Bangladesh, let's not forget that Bangladesh is a sovereign country. It has its own rights, and it has every right to do whatever it wants to do. We cannot possibly influence them. And let's not forget also one thing, that we can influence them only up to a point, because beyond a point, Sheikh Hasina in particular has to also take care of her I mean, domestic constituency, and that domestic constituency is a large section of the domestic constituency is, I would say, very rabid, very anti-India. So if she just to be, so she has to play some sort of a balancing act. And if you look at even Sri Lanka, all of them, let's not talk about the consequences of what happened, let's not talk about whether they are learning any lessons out of, say, Pakistan's experience or even Sri Lanka's for that matter. That's not the thing here. What I am saying is that they have to, she is trying to please both sides. From her point of view, right now it seems China has deep pockets, China is willing to do a lot of things, you know, over and above what India is already offering her. And so she thinks it's okay to pursue that. She needs some money, number one. But at the same time, she cannot afford to be too close to India, because there is already the charge that is there in Bangladesh, that India rigged the election in favor of Sheikh Hasina to ensure that she comes back to power. So it's a huge domestic issue. So apart from that, if you are looking at what we are talking about, the water thing in this case, China has an agreement with Bangladesh to supply hydrological data. This thing has existed for a very long time now, quite a few years. In fact, China was not giving India the hydrological data around 2017, 2018 when the Doklam crisis took place, and it was only after Mr. Modi's visit to Wuhan, if I remember correctly, if you remember that lake resort that Xi Jinping and Mr. Modi met in that particular year, 2018, around that time, again China agreed to supply hydrological data to India. But throughout they have been supplying hydrological data of the Brahmaputra's water to Bangladesh. But yes, the risk always remains about, number one, causing famine, because you see, whether they are going to do it to Bangladesh or not, we do not know, but they can at least cause floods. And I mean, till date there are certain, not many explanations for certain floods that have happened in Assam out of the blue. So yes, if you are looking at China and China's position, China is in a position to blackmail the countries, the lower riparian countries, particularly Bangladesh, with water. Yes, India also, but it's a different case with India. There are so many other issues involved in this. But yes, so Sheikh Hasina should be very careful before landing in China's lap in such a big way. But then she thinks that maybe she doesn't have a choice.
Ambassador Mukherjee, we've seen what's happened to Sri Lanka and Pakistan and a number of other countries who have trusted China to be their all-weather ally. And, you know, we definitely don't want Bangladesh to go down that route.
Sheikh Hasina is a pragmatic politician, and I would agree with Joyita's analysis that there is a huge domestic problem for her. So she has to play her cards carefully. In fact, because she's played them so carefully, the condition of Hindus in Bangladesh has deteriorated rapidly. Durga Puja is now celebrated only in 3 or 4 places in Bangladesh. There has been a rapid reduction of the Hindu population in Bangladesh. So I would say that she has played her cards, in fact, so carefully that there are many who feel that we could have expected something much more from Sheikh Hasina as far as treatment of Hindu minority is concerned. That being said, we don't really have many options in Bangladesh because the other party is virulently anti-Indian and pro-Pakistan. We certainly don't have many options. She may play her cards close to her chest. We don't have many cards. We have only one card, that's Sheikh Hasina. We have to hope that her pragmatism will not take her too far down the path, as Professor Nalapad said, of our neighbors who embraced China and then regretted it. I would say that her handling of the Bangladesh economy has been good. She has been able to lift Bangladesh out of the LDC category. Perhaps she sees China just as a useful opportunity for investment. Maybe she understands that if she goes too far with China on that side of the water issue, she would make things much more difficult for the central government in India to persuade an already indignant West Bengal government to give concessions on Teesta. These are many, many issues here which I'm sure she understands, coming from the eastern part of India as Joyita and I do. There's a whole issue on Teesta. If she doesn't want to push us into a situation where we would have to renege on on what we promised, I hope that she would see reason and not go beyond a particular point as far as balancing relations between China and India are concerned. But having seen the rapidly declining population of minorities in Bangladesh, I have to express my grave disappointment that Sheikh Hasina actually has already let us down on many issues. I really hope and pray that on this one, she's not going to let us down, because then the consequences will be immediate, even if we have no other option except Sheikh Hasina, which again, Vineet, from a pure foreign policy strategic context, is not a good situation for India to be in. That we have only one card to play in Bangladesh, and that's Sheikh Hasina. Vineet.
Professor Nalapat, how do you respond to what Ambassador Mukherjee has said? This is obviously, a pivotal aspect of this relationship.
Well, there's no question that the minority population in Bangladesh steadily gone down. There's no question that there have been attacks on the Hindu and Christian minorities in Bangladesh, increasing number of attacks. And there's no doubt that extremist groups who would like to replace Sheikh Hasina are still working assiduously to replace her. The problem is that she has basically turned a Nelson's eye to a lot of this extremism in the hope of pacifying such people. They can never be pacified. They were never pacified, and they're responsible for the death of so many members of her family. And China was very active in trying to protect the Pakistan military and enable to keep controlling Bangladesh. That history is there for Bangladesh to see. So from that point of view, yes, I think China is not going to be a reliable partner at all. But I think Sheikh Hasina now is in a situation where she wants to do whatever she feels is necessary to remain in office, because she's afraid that if she's out of office, then the retribution of the opposition party that comes to power will be very nasty and, of course, completely illegal. So I think she's now determined to stay in government no matter what. And the compromises that have been made, as outlined by Ambassador Mukherjee, I think are part of that no matter what, where Sheikh Hasina is concerned.
Ninad?
The part here is that, yes, hi. I think that, the most interesting part is that, Bangladesh's very, very impressive economic growth is not a given. This is a one-horse pony. Please understand that beyond a point, it does not have, it is the second largest textile producer in the world. But in the last 5 years, it has gone to the IMF twice. It has, one of the highest populations in the world crowded into Bangladesh, So it's very important to understand that Bangladesh has a long way to go before it becomes viable. The hype about Bangladesh coming back, becoming better than India, etc., has been washed. A lot of water has gone down all those streams in Bangladesh since then. It needs $5 billion from China. It was a very interesting joint statement where China said we will give some grant, some grant in aid, and a lot of commercial loans. This has not been specified. $5 billion is not a small amount of money for Bangladesh. It's a huge amount of money. And I think we will very soon be seeing, everything now depends on viability of Bangladesh going forward. India, I think, can afford, let China come together and let Bangladesh perhaps regret it, when they sober up.
All right. Well, Bangladesh, Joyita, is a growing economy. It's got its stature, but a lot of these facilities and a lot of these impressions that have been created about Bangladesh, have also been facilitated by India. We obviously help Bangladesh from time to time. We obviously are also responsible for Bangladesh per se as a country. Should there be much cause of worry if China continues its aggressive friendship, so to speak, with Bangladesh?
Well, first of all, Bangladesh exists because of India. It's a different matter that, their population in general, they tend to forget that. and there is a very, very rabid section which would now align with Pakistan, their oppressors. But yes, you see, that's a different issue altogether here. But I think what Bangladesh, when we say it is rising economically, it can rise only up to a point. I agree with Ninad that, you know, it's a one trick pony, because you see, beyond this particular thing about this garments industry and all, they cannot go beyond that. And even then, you know, it can never be an economic superpower, never ever. It will be a reasonably economically well placed country, provided it does not allow the kind of negativity that is there in its society now, the kind of radicalization we are witnessing. I am told even some of Hasina's advisor also they're strong Islamist radicals. As long as Bangladesh is able to control these tendencies, it will grow up to a point, but otherwise Bangladesh is it's basically it's going to cut the branch it's sitting on. Okay, and now when you are looking at China, China is not looking at helping Bangladesh to prosper. China wants a country which is right now basically they want to surround India. Okay, and the very fact that they are coming into Bangladesh in such a way is because they want to surround India. And apart from that, we have all seen. So you know how almost all the countries, they have gone belly up wherever China has entered. So sooner or later they will realize what our problem is. One thing let's not forget, Bangladesh is surrounded by India, except for a tiny strip that is there with Burma, Myanmar. Bangladesh is surrounded by India. So even for China, it is not going to be that easy to get Bangladesh under control. But the problem is that you see this plays both ways. Just as it will not allow China that kind of access it has to many other countries. The problem is, you see, because we are surrounded, we are surrounding them from all sides. The problem is radicalization on our border areas, illegal immigrants, all these problems we have to face. So it's like a double-edged sword.
All right. Well, we've also run out of time. Would like to thank all my guests for being a part of this insightful debate. We take a short break.